so glad you can join us. Here's what's happening. Canada's west in the grip of raging wildfires.
And if the order comes, we're asking you to listen.
Communities on edge as flames inch closer.
I just made my maiden speech in this House.
Well, he didn't take long to pick up old Liberal habits of not being able to answer questions.
The Prime Minister faces off in his first question period. Plus, meet the Canadian holding court at the French Open.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Wildfires burning out of control. That is the headline for Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta as the season heats up. The urgency of what is unfolding can be seen from space. Manitoba's premier is cautioning residents to get ready to get out, especially in Flin Flon, after a fire in Saskatchewan jumped the border. Now, this is the big picture. You are looking at hot spots in the prairies with fires burning in all three provinces, including British Columbia. And this is what the forecast looks like for the fire season. Now, note the areas in red specifically. We have extensive coverage, beginning with CTV's Alex Karpa in Winnipeg. Okay, Alex.
Sandy, Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew called the wildfire situation very serious, and he wants the people of Flin Flon along the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border to prepare for the worst.
If the order comes, we're asking you to listen.
A wildfire burning in Creighton, Saskatchewan jumped the border into Manitoba, and it continues to grow. Patients from Flin Flon's hospital are already being preemptively evacuated. A number of communities in the northern part of the province have been evacuated, including the town of Lynn Lake yesterday. Premier Kinew says hotels across the province are already full.
We're going to be turning to other folks in the community, not necessarily private residences, but companies and communities across the province to potentially open your doors. If we have to move a community of 6,000 people, thereabouts, then we are going to be turning to people for help.
More than 198,000 hectares have burned in the province to date. There are currently 18 active wildfires, and Manitoba does have the highest fire activity in Canada so far this year.
I'm Allison Bamford in Candle Lake, Saskatchewan, where the resort village is under a pre-alert evacuation, and the village office is asking those who can to voluntarily evacuate now. Earlier this week, two of the province's largest wildfires merged into one, and that is what's threatening the area right now as it burns about 20 kilometers to the east. There's a steady stream of trucks hauling boats and trailers leaving the area today. One man we spoke to is doing what he can to protect his cabin that's been in his family for 60 years.
What we're going to do is put up a pump and a sprinkler system to bring the humidity up in the area, wet everything down, and if the fire, if it does reach this point, which I feel is unlikely, but if it does, I think the fire will probably just go around.
Further north, at least 4,000 people have already been forced to flee their homes, 1,700 of them from Pelican Narrows. The Red Cross has set up temporary accommodations in the province's three largest cities, Saskatoon, Regina, and Prince Albert. Alaska and Quebec are lending aerial support, but the Public Safety Agency says provincial resources are stretched, and allocating those resources is similar to an emergency room. The most critical are helped first.
I'm Kathy Lee in Calgary, where the city and the majority of Alberta are currently under a heat warning, making it even more challenging for crews to battle wildfires. Provincial data shows there are more than 40 active wildfires in the province, with 3 of them threatening public safety, communities, or critical infrastructure, including the Lake Edith wildfire that forced Swan Hills, a town of more than 1,300, to evacuate on Monday night. The wildfire is raging out of control about 8 kilometers north of the town and has burned more than 3,500 hectares.
The big thing that's happened in the last 24 hours is that the fire has crossed Highway 33. So we're dealing with that, working to contain the fire on the other side of the highway now.
Environment Canada says the heat warning will stay in place until tomorrow, when the temperature is expected to go above 30 degrees in many parts of the province.
Generally speaking, these hot and dry conditions aren't great for the wildfire risk overall, and we're seeing this period of relatively prolonged heat, as well as thunderstorm risk.
People of Swan Hills are at a reception center in the nearby town of Whitecourt. An evacuee CTV News spoke to says they'll be there until at least Friday.
Right.
Sandy.
Okay, thank you to Kathy, Allison, and Alex. Now, as we heard, heat and drought conditions make wildfires worse. So take note of a new forecast for record-breaking hot temperatures over the next 5 years. The World Meteorological Organization predicts an 80% chance the world will break another annual temperature record in that period. The report warns that warmer temperatures could cause harsher heat waves, extreme rainfall, and melting glaciers. Well, some heated exchanges in Ottawa today as Prime Minister Mark Carney marked a milestone, his first question period as Prime Minister, the debut as Parliament gets back to work with a sense of urgency before the summer break. CTV senior political correspondent Mike Lecouture watched the day unfold. Okay, Mike, Mark Carney is accustomed to asking, rather answering questions, but question period is a different animal entirely, and he's a rookie at it. So how did he do?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, you have to consider the fact that he's never been on the floor of the House of Commons as a member of Parliament. So I think we can understand that there will be some growing pains. And he has to get used to dealing with heckles from opposition benches. And he got one of them right out of the gate.
Could you also indulge me to...
So that was a Conservative MP who yelled out time just as he was beginning to speak. A bit of a playful initiation into those customs that he should be getting used to from across the aisle from those opposition benches. One thing to note, he will not be doing a Prime Minister's question period like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did when he would take all questions during question period on Wednesdays. He did take 9 today, though, and he did have an interesting exchange with the leader of the Conservatives in the House, Andrew Scheer. Have a listen.
He told Canadians that the government would collect $20 billion in revenue from those tariffs and use it to cost his platform. Now that those tariffs are going to bring in $0, 2 quick questions. Why wasn't he honest with Canadians during the election? And how's he going to make up the shortfall? Is he going to borrow it, print it, or tax it?
Mr. Speaker, our tariffs have maximum impact on the United States, minimum impact on Canada, and we are dedicating all the revenues from those tariffs to supporting the workers and businesses affected by the unjustified American actions.
Now, Mike, another Conservative, Pierre Poilievre, wasn't in the House today. He can't be there because he doesn't have a seat, but he still had things to say. Like what?
Yeah, it was interesting. He told reporters that this was one of the first times in decades that he couldn't actually be in question period because, as you said, he doesn't have a seat. But he said he wished he could have been there. He also talked about how his party will support the Liberals' middle-class tax cut. He says they're also going to try and push for an even bigger tax cut, but I think that's an interesting tone going forward for the Conservatives, Sandy. And, you know, this is the kickoff of this new parliamentary calendar, so it could be something of a sign to come.
Okay, Mike, as always, thanks so much. Let's pick up on that tone Mike referred to with CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelas. Okay, Vashi, a new session of Parliament with a lot of new faces. Justin Trudeau is gone. Conservative Andrew Scheer is back from the past. So how would you compare the dynamic today to the last session?
Yeah, I think, Sandy, what stood out to me initially was no Justin Trudeau, no Jagmeet Singh, and no Pierre Poilievre. So just by virtue of that, it certainly felt a lot different than 5 months ago. But oh, what has changed in the interim as well, right? Just as a country, we've gone through a lot, and of course, the election happened. And so I did think, as Mike pointed out, that the tone was different than what we were used to. I think it was reflective of what we've heard over the last month since the outcome of the election and what we heard during the campaign, which is that Canadians want more substantive discussion, more substantive debate. That does not mean don't criticize the government, for example, or in the government's case, don't defend your ideas. But I do not think that anyone wanted to see everyone going at each other in the way they would have been, let's say, exactly a year ago. So whether or not that remains the case, I think, is a different question. It might last throughout this sitting. Whether it lasts into the fall when a budget is introduced, I think will be another matter entirely.
All right, Vashi, thank you. Our return to the bargaining table for Canada Post and the union representing 55,000 workers, with a response and an ultimatum from the Crown Corporation. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin is on this story for us today. And Geneviève, where do things stand?
Well, Sandy, Canada Post reported today a $1.3 billion operating loss and says it really simply can't afford not to change its delivery service. And so it is saying that it has presented its final offers. Now, it says there are enhancements in there, but it's also sticking to several points that have been contentious with the union, including things like the wage increase as well as the use of part-time workers. So we'll see what the union has to say about it. We don't know yet. They've not said their reaction. We're waiting and watching for that, but so are many users across the country here who are waiting to see what will happen. I spoke to a business owner today, David Kwan. He owns a trading cards and board games shop. He's been doing business for many years with Canada Post, usually likes the service, but he says right now it's very anxious. There's a lot of uncertainty. He also says that he is dealing still with the fallout of the strike from the beginning of the year, from the end leading up to the holidays. Here's what he had to say.
We ended up with 2 months worth of packages sitting and waiting, and whatever was already shipped out prior to the strike was just lost in the system.
And some of it was never found after, right?
Oh, a good chunk of it was never found, and it's, refunds here and there.
Kwan says he wants to stick with Canada Post as long as he can, but other business owners are saying they simply can't stay with a service that doesn't deliver when they need it. Sandy.
All right, Geneviève Beauchemin. Thank you, Jen. More reaction today to Donald Trump's social media post on the cost for Canada to be part of the Golden Dome project. He wrote, "Nothing if we become the 51st state." Well, the U.S. president's missive comes as Canada faces pressure to spend more on defense and economic security. CTV's Judy Trinh attended a military defense conference today and learned more about Canada's plans. Judy.
Sandy, the Minister of Defense says Canada wants to join a European initiative to bolster defense manufacturing and is in consultations with the U.S. about joining Donald Trump's proposed Golden Dome.
Shut down Kansas! Shut down Kansas!
An anti-war demonstration outside a military trade show. While inside, Defense Minister David McGuinty said the government will spend billions of dollars of new money to protect the nation's security.
Prime Minister Carney made it perfectly clear. Yesterday evening, he signaled our intention to sign on to a major European defense rearmament plan by July 1st.
Joining the Rearm Europe program will reduce reliance on the United States. Canada buys 75% of its military equipment from the Americans.
This right here, the Golden Dome for America, is a game changer.
President Donald Trump taunted Canada again to get support for a new missile defense system. To be part of the Golden Dome will cost $61 billion, but will cost $0 if they become our cherished 51st state.
It's outrageous. It's absolutely unacceptable. We're a sovereign nation, and that's not for discussion or negotiation.
He just wants to stir the pot and cause trouble. Are you considering Trump's offer?
Comments ignored by the Prime Minister, but McGuinty says Canada is discussing partnerships with the U.S. and the Europeans.
We're continuing our discussions with the White House. Minister LeBlanc was there this week. We're continuing our discussions with the Europeans.
Trump's former Secretary of State says he's not sure what part the Golden Dome will play in trade negotiations.
I don't know if it provides leverage or for whom that leverage might be, but it is absolutely imperative that we do this together for geographic reasons.
Canada is spending about $40 billion this year on defense. That's only 1.37% of its GDP. The country won't hit its 2% NATO target until 2030. Adding more pressure, at its next annual meeting of leaders, the military alliance is expected to increase its target to 5%. McGuinty will meet with other NATO defense ministers next week. He will not say if Canada intends on pushing back against the new proposed 5% target. Sandy.
CTV's Judy Trinh. Now, the demonstration that Judy referred to outside the Ottawa Defence Conference has resulted in the arrests of at least 13 people. The annual military gathering drew protesters opposed to the ongoing Israeli offensive in Gaza. Demonstrators are demanding that Ottawa halt all arms exports to the IDF. The detentions were said to be for mischief and assaulting police. Coming up, home from a war zone.
5 years old, third-degree burn wounds all the way to her bone.
Canadians bear witness in Gaza as Israelis mark a terrible milestone. It's been 600 days since the October 7th massacre, the worst mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. Thousands of people gathered across Israel to mark that deadly day. Family members of the 58 hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza spoke to the crowd, calling for them to be released. Well, a second day of chaos in Gaza as humanitarian aid shipments trickled into the besieged territory. A group of Canadian doctors who traveled there held a press conference in Ottawa today to share their experiences. CTV's Abigail Beeman now with more on what was said and reaction on Parliament Hill. Abigail.
Sandy, the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says one person was killed and dozens were injured when crowds overwhelmed an aid distribution site, blaming Israeli gunfire. Israel says soldiers only fired warning shots outside the compound. Thousands of Palestinians desperate for food descend on this new aid site in Rafah. This man says he has a 10-member family but could only get one can of peas. While at a different site, the Associated Press reports 4 people were killed when hundreds stormed this UN food warehouse, pulling off pieces of the building in an attempt to get inside. The UN accuses Israel of weaponizing aid. Israel says it's the UN that failed to pick up 400 aid trucks ready to go in Gaza.
The UN must stop spreading panic and start moving aid. Put your ego aside, pick up the aid, and do your job.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister said Mohammed Sinwar, Hamas's de facto leader in Gaza and brother of the former leader and October 7th mastermind, has been killed.
But I saw so many kids with burn wounds. Very painful.
Here in Ottawa, Canadian doctors who worked in Gaza shared their experiences as they offer a prescription to the Prime Minister, calling on Canada to help deliver aid and enforce a ceasefire.
We have been there, not once, multiple times. Not for a photo op or headlines, but to save lives. But as doctors, we can't end this genocide.
Today, I'm proud to announce that I have reintroduced my motion to recognize the State of Palestine.
A private member's motion, but the new Foreign Affairs Minister twice dodged reporter questions about the government's position.
Is there an and on the motion from the MPP?
It has been more than a week since Canada released a joint statement with the UK and France calling on the Israeli government to end the renewed military offensive and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, threatening, quote, concrete action if they do not. Sandy?
CTV's Abigail Beeman. Still ahead, busted at the border. A cross-country operation nets a huge haul of narcotics. The Canada Border Services Agency says a drug sweep earlier this year called Operation Blizzard has netted a huge amount of illegal narcotics. The agency says it intercepted nearly 2 kilograms of fentanyl and about 60 kilograms of other narcotics in postal, air, and marine containers. 67% of the seizures were coming into Canada from the United States, while about 17% were narcotics going into the U.S. 2 men were sentenced today for their roles in a human smuggling operation that saw a family freeze to death in southern Manitoba. Harsh Kumar Patel was sentenced to 10 years. Steve Shand got 6.5. The court in Minnesota heard how a couple from India and their 2 children were sent walking across the border in an overnight blizzard. Their bodies were found just meters from the border. Patel was found guilty of organizing the smuggling trips while Shand picked up migrants on the U.S. side of the border. And a close call for a concertgoer in Toronto after the fan was hit by fireworks. Brianna Flynn was singing along with rapper Jelly Roll at one of the best spots near the stage at the Rogers Centre when she says she was hit by fireworks cascading from the top of the arena.
I just felt something very hot and hard hit my head out of nowhere. I didn't know what was happening until the people next to me were like, "Your hair's on fire."
Flynn got first aid on site and because of that missed the headlining act, American Post Malone. The burn injury is healing, but the 24-year-old hopes the tour organizers make changes to keep fans safe. After the break, the new French Open favorite, a Canadian teenager's dream run. Time to get excited about another rising Canadian tennis star. Her name is Victoria Mboko. She's the 18-year-old phenom who's already won 42 matches this year, and the year, of course, is still young. CTV's Adrian Gobriel took a swing at this story and serves up a backgrounder.
A commanding forehand has catapulted a Canadian onto the global tennis stage.
It's been my first Grand Slam ever, so, I mean, there's a lot of emotions going on.
Still just a teenager, 18-year-old Victoria Mboko is turning heads at the French Open.
Of course, there's so much happening, even behind the scenes, but, I feel like my family has been doing a good job of keeping me really, I guess, isolated from it all.
Family is central to Mboko's story. Her parents fled violence and conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She was born in 2006 in Charlotte, North Carolina. That year, the Mboko family moved to Canada. The tennis academy she grew up playing at in Burlington, Ontario, now features her photo on their website. On Sunday, the teen won her first ever Grand Slam match. Today, she knocked out the world's 59th ranked Eva Lees, punching her ticket to the third round. Mboko was ranked 350th this time last year. She's now a sure bet to break into the top 100. The 18-year-old says she's taken inspiration from a former Canadian champion.
I think I looked up a little bit to Bianca Andreescu when she won the U.S. Open in 2019. It was such an inspiring experience for everyone in Canada.
All eyes now shift to Friday, where Mboko will line up against an Olympic gold medalist, who also happens to be the 8th-seeded woman in the world, Qin Wen-jung, where we'll see if the hollowed clay courts of Roland Garros provide the sure-footed Canadian the foundation to climb into tennis lore. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up, and we'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now.